All right, and we are back again for live on Monday night, like we always do, Monday and Wednesday nights here on the channel, on YouTube, X, Facebook, and over here on TikTok. I'll run it down with you guys tonight for the AMA. Man, lots of things going on out there in geopolitics, the Twitter sphere, crypto in general, all of the above. We got a lot of things to talk about tonight. So go ahead and jump into it here. OCC has given Crypto.com their preliminary federal bank charter. You've got some crazy stuff in Mexico that happened over the weekend here. The leader of the largest cartel in Mexico was taken down by the U.S. government. Man, oh man, they are not happy about that. There's been a lot of things, praying for those that are stuck over there in Mexico. Sounds like people are hunkered down, waiting on all this to pass. Cartel has blocked streets. They're lighting things on fire, but not good stuff. I will say, this is interesting timing for this. From what I hear, again, this is hearsay, so speculation, put your tinfoil hat on. A lot of the money that is moved by this cartel is in Bitcoin and Tether. Does that mean they sanctioned Tether to be able to stop the funding for this illicit activity in Mexico? I don't know, but interesting timing of all of this. You've also got things heating up over there in the Middle East, continuing to escalate. You got Israel, and Iran also still at each other's throats. U.S. has a very large presence in the region with the military at this point, like 1/3 of our Navy over there, poised and ready to go. So any time now, looks like things could escalate there in the Middle East, and they could shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is exactly what we've been talking about for almost 2 years to the day. If you want to go back and watch the original Domino theory, I put it out the first week of March in 2024. This is almost the first week of March here in 2026. Feels very reminiscent of Michael Burry and everything that happened with the GFC. And on that, I will say everybody's a little beat up right now with the market action. I'm feeling it too, just like everybody else is. People have said, there's not as much pep in your step as there normally is. Hey, look, I'm not immune to it either. That doesn't mean I doubt anything, right? I still have just as strong as conviction as I ever have. And if you liked it at $3, you should love it at $1.40. So, again, this is probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice, only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. If you need a financial advisor that can work with you on your crypto, you can reach out to digitalwealthpartners.net, soon to be all under one umbrella here in the near future, because it's that way it's not as confusing for people. But as of today, it is still digitalwealthpartners.net. You can go over there, schedule a time with one of the advisors, and they will knock it out for you and give you actual financial advice on your crypto. No, this is not pre-recorded over here on TikTok. This is live. This is the real deal. I'm very candid. I come on here and answer questions. You get them off the cuff. None of this is pre-recorded or any of that stuff. So with that, we are waiting on them to potentially close the Strait of Hormuz. Once that happens, we will see the Bank of Japan have to step in. You got SBI issuing bonds that are redeemable or paid out in XRP, which is big deal. Locking up more XRP. The ETF still eating XRP off the market slowly but surely. I think we have close to 800 million XRP locked up in the ETFs at this point. We are coming to the end of the month here. We have another escrow release from Ripple. Should be the first couple days of March. So there could be a little bit more XRP that moves onto the market at that point. If you were going to dwindle it down, this would be the time to do it. We've had 200 million XRP move off of Binance here in the last week. And people might say, well, why does that matter? Well, if it's not on the exchanges, it is not available for trade. And even though you can look at the exchanges and see their wallets, you can go to XRP scan, check that out. There's about 15 billion XRP on exchanges. That doesn't mean that's all available for trade. A lot of that is held by retail and the exchanges themselves for their position in XRP on their balance sheet and is not available for trade. The OTC desk and dark pools are getting very low on their available supply for the ETFs to continue to purchase there without moving the price. They've continued to sell on the exchanges to push the price down, but we have had enough volume step in here. We've had pretty strong support for XRP at $1.40, $1.34, whatever it's at right now. There's a lot of people saying the market could go lower. It could, I hate people that waffle and don't want to make a decision or tell you which way it's going to go with conviction. It kind of irks me. I'm going to go ahead and say we've bottomed. But again, not financial advice. If you've got limit orders, I know people personally that have limit orders set at 88 cents, 90 cents, $1.05, $1.10, $1.20. It's not to say we won't wick to those levels. But I think it'll be short-lived if we do, and then it should rebound pretty quickly. So not to say you can't catch a falling knife if you got a limit order there. That's not my game. That's not what I'm playing. I just continue to dollar cost average. So, that's up to you. But the sentiment is like the fear and greed index is at 5. It is the lowest I have ever seen it. I've been here for 6 years. And this is the lowest I have ever seen the market as far as fear goes. Everybody's scared. Everybody's uncertain. BART chart shows the highest uncertainty that we've ever had in history for the population. More so than COVID, more so than the dot-com boom. People are more uncertain about the outcome of what's going on right now than they've been in our lifetimes. I can say that hands down, my lifetime, probably anybody else's lifetime that you've been watching this. I mean, we're in the middle of a complete geopolitical financial shift that is never going to occur again in my lifetime, much less, probably my kids' lifetimes. So lots of things to be uncertain about other than XRP. That's the only thing I am still completely certain about. So we will go ahead and jump into the chat here. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday night to come hang out with me. If you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, share. It does help the channel and the algorithm get this out to more people. If you do find value here, if you don't, then you don't have to do any of those things. So, all right, we'll go ahead and jump into it. Got Coach. He says my Discord Mastermind account opens when I sign in, but all the content is gone. Is this problem widespread? How do I fix it? I mean, I can log into mine right now. Don't switch. I can see all the channels. We have had some API issues occasionally. I think we've kind of overwhelmed the server that we have sometimes over there. We got 17,000 people. I'll tell you total here. We'll look at members. We have, just a little over 16,000 people connected to Discord. So you can imagine one server at Discord might not be able to handle that. We have upgraded stuff, and so we shouldn't have those issues as frequently. If you do have issues, you can just reach out to info@beyondbroke.com, and the team there is the support team, and they should be able to reconnect you fairly easily. So again, appreciate you being part of the community, and apologize for the technical difficulties. That's probably a good time to mention this. Again, if you do want to join the Discord, the Mastermind community, again, 16,000 people connected to the Discord. It's month to month, no contract. You can cancel at any time. For there to be 16,000 people there, you can imagine the value that they're receiving for the cost of what they're paying. All you got to do is use the code BeyondBroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar. Get you the first month for $2 there in the group. If you like it, stay. If you don't like it, cancel. We want to make it easy for people, and there's been lots of communities that I've been a part of where you pay for the full year, or it's a cost a lot more than what we charge. Carbon one's $100 a month, carbon two's 250, carbon three's invite only. But I will say, the majority of the masterminds that I've been a part of, the minimum that I've ever paid was $3,000. Most I've ever paid is about $50,000 a year to participate in a community. So, and that's my job, right? Like, I'm supposed to go out into these larger communities, find cool people, find deal flow, find information, and then bring that back and distill it down to something that's easily digestible and understandable by our community, right? So you don't have to pay that much money, and you get access to awesome information that you really can't get anywhere else. All right, next up, we got Diva Delights 2025. They say, with the Clarity Act close to getting done, do you still think price appreciation before Clarity Act signed in April? I do. I think that XRP will appreciate prior to the Clarity Act being signed. It could be right before, but I'm pretty confident it will happen prior to the Clarity Act being signed. So if you are the same as me and you're in that boat, that would give you 30 something days. Not that many. 40 days, somewhere in there. All right. And I think it'll happen before Easter. Patrick Witt, that was his timeline, was April 3rd. And he's the advisor to Trump in the White House for crypto. So if anybody's going to know a timeline, he's going to be the guy. Retired fire chief says, hi, Jake. Is Evernorth just an ODL provider for XRP? I'm trying to understand how SPACs fit into the crypto puzzle beyond ODL. So this is actually a really good question. So Evernorth will be seeding DeFi protocols on the XRPL. So we've got a couple amendments that are currently up for vote here. XRP Scan is a fantastic tool. You can go to xrpscan.com/amendments and see all the amendments that are currently up for vote on the XRPL. We recently got permission DEX through. That is, ready to go. It's live as of 2/18. Token Escrow was the one before that on 2/12. Those two are big. Permission DEX is a big deal for institutions using the mainnet. You've already seen volume start to pick up on the mainnet, up hundreds of percent just in the last few days. What could that be? Probably institutions dipping their toe over there on the mainnet of the XRPL. But back to the DeFi protocol. So we've got single asset vault. We've got the lending protocol. Not so many votes on those right now. We got 8 and 6. We need 28, 29 votes on both of those for those to go live. And there is a 2-week waiting period. But the SPAC will allow people to invest in a DAT, or a digital asset treasury company. Ripple could also be considered a digital asset treasury company. If you were to value it based on the amount of XRP that they have, they're worth significantly more, like $600-700 billion versus 50 billion, which is what they raised their last round at with Citadel and Fortress in November of 2025. So that's at a 1.8 times NAV. Actually, that was Brad Garlinghouse sent out a shareholders message toward the end of last year, talking about a couple different ways that you could value their company and why he believes they're significantly undervalued at $50 billion, which I would agree with. So anyway, back to the DAT. You've seen Bitcoin DATs, you've seen Ethereum DATs, you've seen a ton DAT, you've seen all these different tokens that are holding a certain digital asset in their treasury. And they still have their own business, whatever it might be that they are running, but the main benefit of allocating to that equity is the allocation to the underlying asset that trades, as a multiple of NAV. So net asset value, right? So if it was a 1-to-1, you would look at an ETF. There's not a whole lot of leverage with that. And the ETF can't put the assets to work in a way that's not native on chain. So aside from staking, they really can't borrow against or margin the assets or do much else with them to be able to generate a return. Evernorth can. Evernorth can take the XRP that they have in their treasury, close to 700-800 million XRP, and then they can take that and go put it to work in DeFi protocols. That's a big deal. They can seed a lot of these liquidity pools. that are going to be providing liquidity in different applications once these amendments are live. And I think they've timed this really well. I thought that they kind of stretched this out because they started this process really kind of middle of last year. First rumblings I heard of it were probably July, August last year, that Evernorth was going to, and then I didn't know the name of it then. I just knew that there was going to be a DAT that was going to go public through a SPAC. And it got pushed out. And so, the first opportunity that they would have to go public is going to be Q1 this year. And it just so happens to line up with a lot of these DeFi things that have been proposed on the XRPL. So, I would say, Ripple is obviously, they have 3 validators, part of the UNL. They definitely hold some weight. They propose a lot of amendments. Timing from them, I would say, is a bit more curated to their objectives. But the actual voting on these, they can't sway one way or the other. They actually have to be voted on by the UNL validators. And you do have to get, 25 other people to vote your direction. So it's not like this is a centralized thing. It is completely decentralized, but it can be curated as far as timing that benefits them. So all that being said, the reason you would allocate to a DAT is you're basically moving up the risk curve in your allocation to XRP. Okay, so you could have a direct allocation. You can have an allocation through an ETF. Both of those are pretty the kind of the low risk on the spectrum. The ETF is probably the lowest risk on the spectrum because it's in your stock portfolio. They hold it in institutional custody. It's backed 1-to-1 and audited, all the stuff. Holding it on your own is probably more risky than allocating through an ETF where somebody else manages the assets, unless you're holding it in institutional custody with Digital Wealth Partners, and then you're getting the same assurances you would for an ETF. But if you're holding it on a cold wallet or on an exchange, probably a little bit further up the risk curve, and then a DAT would be even further up the risk curve. So it would be like taking leverage on the XRP on a trade. So you're leveraged long or leveraged short on the XRP. That would kind of be the equivalent. And the reason for that is they can use debt as a tool to trade above NAV. So what does that mean? Well, they could borrow money to buy more XRP, and that's basically a leverage play on the asset itself. And you can take an allocation in the company, and that would then give you some leverage as well. And it can trade above NAV and it can trade below NAV. And they can also put that XRP to work in more exotic or riskier ways versus just staking it, like you would be able to do for an ETF, if it's an Ethereum ETF or a Solana ETF. We don't have native staking for XRP, so really the only way to generate a return on it is to currently margin the asset in some way and then trade that in a market neutral strategy. We do that at Digital Wealth Partners. Midas does that. Doppler does that. Anybody else that's providing yield or returns on XRP at this point is margining the asset. They're using it as collateral. They get a line of credit against it. They trade that in a market neutral strategy, and that's how they're generating returns on it. Flare, coming up with some interesting solutions in the near future. Heard some rumblings about that I think you guys are going to be excited about. But yeah, Flare, what can I say? I think that Evernorth is looking at a variety of options to be able to put their XRP to work, because you would want, same thing with Digital Wealth Partners. Like you want a menu of things that are across the risk curve that you can allocate to. The majority of that would probably be on the low risk end, and then you might allocate a small portion to the higher risk end to be able to generate some outsized returns while making sure that you have stable returns on the low end. And again, I'm not a financial advisor. That's just kind of what I would think they would do. And I'm sure that they're going to use institutional custody and all the stuff, right? So again, if you don't want to manage your XRP or digital assets, and you really don't understand wallets and keys and all this stuff, there's really only 2 ways to go. You can allocate to a DAT or an ETF and get an allocation that way. Some type of structured product that these institutions or companies are going to launch. Or you can, send the money over to Digital Wealth Partners and they can buy you a direct allocation, and then you manage it through the portal there for Securitize. Well, actually, it's Anchorage now because they acquired what used to be On-Ramp, that portion of Securitize. And yeah, it's easy. You don't have to understand the keys. Your spouse is on the account. You have beneficiaries on the account. You're good to go, just like it would be for any other stock account that you might have with Schwab or Fidelity or whoever else. So those are really kind of the only two ways if you don't want to deal with all the cumbersome stuff and the learning curve that goes along with it. But yeah, they definitely will continue to lock up more XRP in these protocols and borrow money to buy more XRP off the market to lock it up in these protocols. And then there's less XRP out there moving around for settlement, right? So it drives the price up. Miguel, he says, my question is, how are you so certain that XRP will thrive and get to high prices when banks and institutions could just use RLUSD since it has high velocity and basically zero volatility? Wouldn't that make more sense for them? It's a good question. And there's a lot of people that think that way. And I'm actually going to make a full video on this. So because so many people continue to ask this question, because in my mind, that makes sense, right? At a surface level visceral response, sure. Why wouldn't you just use the stablecoin? Well, if you understand Nostro accounts and you understand third-party risk and you understand how greedy people are, okay? So those are the three things you need to understand. And you could probably agree with me that banks are greedy, right? We could all agree banks and institutions want to make as much money as they can. Okay. They don't want to pay Ripple. And they have to trust Ripple. Okay. And Ripple's good. Like, it's audited, it's transparent. You know that they have the treasuries to back RLUSD. It's at BNY Mellon. Like, it's pristine, right? Like, they're doing it at the highest level. Banks and institutions are going to issue their own stablecoin. Why? Because the treasuries that they're holding are going to pay them a yield that they don't have to pass on to somebody else. And it incentivizes domestic demand for the treasuries. The US and the Fed and everybody else want this to happen. Okay. So if we understand that, they don't want to pay Ripple. They don't want Ripple's third-party counterparty risk. They want to issue their own stablecoins. Now you need something to be able to swap between them. And the reason for that is you look at Nostro accounts across the world. Okay, there's $27 trillion locked up today in Nostro accounts. Nostro is Latin for yours and ours. Okay. If you want to settle into another country right now, let's say I'm JP Morgan and I want to settle into Belize. I've got to send money to Belize and hold it in their currency, Brazilian real or whatever they settle in there. Okay. And if that currency is inflationary, I'm basically lighting that capital on fire. But I have to do that in order to be able to settle with that counterparty. I have to give them some money so that they have collateral so that if something's messed up, they can collect it. Okay. With a neutral bridge currency that settles instantaneously and has a DEX built into it, I can use my stable coin, I can send it to them, and they can receive it in their stable coin because it moved through XRP. But to your point, XRP is volatile, right? Well, it's actually less volatile than the current exchange rates between currencies because the settlement time of XRP is 2 to 3 seconds. Whereas if it takes days to settle, there could be significantly more change in the exchange rate between the two currencies that you're settling. So it actually provides a better solution. And I think it'll be a high stable price with the amount of demand that we're going to see on it after the supply shock. And at that point, it will be much more stable and there will be less volatility and banks will be much more apt to hold it. And that actually came from David Schwartz. So again, these are all things that I have heard over the years, people smarter than me that talk about them. I'm just able to regurgitate it and try to explain it to people in a distilled down, simple manner that allows you to understand why they wouldn't use RLUSD and they would prefer to use XRP because, again, banks are greedy. They want to make their own money. They don't want to give all their money to Ripple. All right. Honest Aim, good to see you. His Mr. Legacy and the T-Lady. Discord and Mastermind are awesome. Franklin Templeton and Binance announced strategic collaboration for access to services for their clients. Big deal. Thanks for everything that you do for us. Appreciate you, brother. Good to see you. Hope you and the family are doing well. So Franklin Templeton, I will tell you, was at Ondo and the Ondo Summit up there in New York. These institutions are leaning in. they see the writing on the wall. They see what's coming. But they still are way out on like segregated accounts. So right now, there's a lot of them that use Fireblocks, and Fireblocks can have segregated accounts, by the way. But it uses MPC technology. For the OCC chartered banks, they have to be FIPS compliant here in the US, and that means they have to use HSMs, or hardware security modules. Those are located in level 4 facilities. This is some of the technical stuff, right? It's the BS that, like, the minutia that most people don't really care about, but it's important because that's what allows them to get the level of insurance that people want and to be bankruptcy remote. And they're licensed, right? So Franklin Templeton does not have a crypto custody business. Binance does. So I think you're going to see more quasi partnerships like this, or acquisitions that take place, especially if we do see something with a sanction on Tether because of what's going on in Mexico. That would cause a huge liquidity crisis across these exchanges. And there would be a lot of cheap exchanges that you could pick up for pennies on a dollar. Pennies on the dollar. If you were on a shopping spree like Warren Buffett, you know. I don't know if you guys seen Uncle Warren or not, but he's got $384 billion sat in cash and cash equivalents. And a portion of that, a significant portion of that's in yen, by the way, cash equivalents. But that is where they're parked. They're currently on the sidelines. This was an interesting statistic that I saw. They could literally buy all 480 companies in the S&P 500, except for the top 20. They could buy all of them. Like the total market cap of the 480 of the companies in the S&P 500 is less than what Uncle Warren has sat on the sideline right now, $384 billion. Now, the top 20, you know, FANG stocks and many others, like some of them are trillions of dollars, so it can't buy those. But like 480 of the largest companies in the world, he could just gobble up if he wanted to with his cash position right now at the peak of the market, not the bottom of the market. So just wild to see that they have that much cash on the sidelines. They're always a lender of last resort. They are a liquidity provider. They back up the Fed when there's a situation, so that they're kind of like the lightweight for the Fed. So as an example, when SBV happened and Silvergate and all those regional banks failed and the FDIC had to step in, that same weekend, a bunch of regional banks flew into Omaha, Nebraska to have a conversation with old Uncle Warren. And sure enough, next quarter, when they reported some of what was on their balance sheet, they had an allocation to a bunch of regional banks. Interesting. So that just tells you right there, like, they're positioning themselves for a liquidity crisis. They're going to be a lender in that situation, and I think we're all going to be okay, but it is going to be volatile when that happens. We got RJ Glasscock, 8713. He says, "Hey Jake, am currently in the process of finishing the LLC. If we hook into our wallets, what is the point of connecting it to a bank? Second question, if I'm on board with DAG, would I be able to borrow from the crypto right away?" So two good questions. First question, why do you need a bank account? Well, you want to maintain a split between your cash and the business's cash. So for the corporate veil, you need to maintain separate accounting and separate books so that if somebody does sue you, a creditor comes after you, you have protection. You have charging order protection for the way that we set that up in Wyoming. So maintaining, balances of cash separate in bank accounts is an important component to maintaining your corporate veil. You can talk to Laughlin. They will help you make sure that that is all buttoned up. The second component, and you would want to segregate wallets too from your personal wallet to the business wallet when you make the contribution. The wallet is now in the business name. You want to also set up exchange accounts in the business name so that there's continuity between those. I know it's a lot of extra steps and a lot of extra BS, but God forbid you rear end somebody, your kid hurts somebody, or somebody falls on your property, or a myriad of things could happen, right? Like there's a lot of possibilities, and inevitably you're going to get sued. Happens. So if you're doing business at any level, you're going to be in lawsuits. It's going to take place. So you want to make sure that you're doing that the right way, and you have that segregation, and a bank account is an important component to that. Second question, if you're on board with DAG, could you borrow from your crypto right away? Yes, you absolutely could. We have multiple vendors with digital wealth partners where you could get liquidity. I am not condoning or advocating for people to borrow against their crypto. Okay, full transparency, probably a bad idea for most people. But we have that capability. We're working on more partners to be able to bring the rates down and the LTV up. I'm pretty confident that when you can do that native on chain, you're going to have some really good stuff happen. Yeah, we'll just say that. So yeah, I think a lot of those things you're going to have that capability for. And we could definitely do that off the jump, especially if you have a Wyoming LLC. Makes that very easy. Vlad, he says, Jake, do you see the current version of the Clarity Act threatening self-custody wallets? The way that it's written is a little, yeah, I could see how it could be interpreted that way. Look, you gotta take me with a grain of salt. Okay. Like I want my stuff in institutional custody because I want my wife on it. I want my kid on it. I want it to be insured. I want all that stuff. Now we have a lot of clients that hold a portion in institutional custody and hold a portion on their cold wallet. We also set up a whitelisted wallet where your assets can only go back to your cold wallet. And that's why we also get the insurance that we do, is because that's the only place they can go back to. So for them to remove the cold wallet and radical responsibility and people's ability to hold it directly, I don't know. I don't think that they're going to be able to do that. I think that there's too many crypto native people that have become very accustomed to that. But I'll say this too. How many people holds their own stock certificates at this point? Probably count them on two hands. There's not that many people, right? Like you want access to a broker. You want the ability to be able to trade it. You want the ability to margin it and do things with it. If you got it on your cold wallet, you're effectively taking your stocks out of the brokerage and putting them in your safe. Like that's literally what you're doing. So back in the day, when stocks first started trading and they were all paper, yeah, people did that all the time. Today, it's all electronic, and you're kind of being really archaic in the way that you're holding these assets. And it's not really because, this is just how the industry's been. And it's kind of the same way when stocks first came out. Like, that's just the way it was. You didn't have a better option. And people were slow to adopt the electronic stuff because it was scary. And they were like, I don't know about this. I don't want to give up my stock certificate. I don't feel like they're going to take good care of it. There's going to be something that happens, which there has been, right? Like we've seen FTX. We saw Celsius, we saw Voyager, you saw BlockFi lock down their exits or their ability to withdraw the other day. I understand why people feel that way, and I am a huge advocate for cold wallets in the current environment that we have. But I think it'll progress. I think that things will change. I think that people will become comfortable holding it in institutional custody over the next 5 to 10 years, and eventually there'll be fewer and fewer cold wallets out there. And also on the other side of quantum, your cold wallet can get hacked. Also, if you are subpoenaed and they want your crypto and they know that you have it, and they know you have it because MasterCard has developed a program to allow them to see if you have it or not, and you tell them, I lost my ledger in a boating accident, they'll just subpoena the keys from the manufacturer of the wallet, and they're required by law to give them up to you, especially if it's ledger. So again, I'm not saying, like, people are like, oh, you're fear mongering people. I'm not fear mongering anybody. Okay. Like, I've seen this happen. It's not like it's a fugazi or a daydream. Okay. Like I've seen it happen. So I'm just sharing with y'all the reality of the situation. You think you're this self-sovereign, I can fly, go do, and I'm an advocate for that, right? Like I am libertarian, but at the same time, I just understand the way that the system works, and we're working to change it. Okay, like we're working to change it, but till we get there, you got to work with what you got. Decent is my wallet of choice. They're out of Korea. A lot less subpoena ability on that one. I think that the DeFi component of the Clarity Act is going to get stripped out, and they'll pass the bill without it, and the DeFi will be a third bill that they end up passing. But that's a separate topic. B Mark, he says, what's going on with the batch amendment going lower? Do they not want it? So it's a good question. If you're not on Twitter, you probably don't know. Vet XRP, it's XO_O vet. I think that's it. Here, I'll tell you guys exactly what his moniker is. Twitter. That's not what I want. Here we go. I just retweeted one of his things the other day, so I should be able to find him pretty quickly here for you. Actually, it was this morning. I said believe. There he is. His username over there on X is vet_X0. Highly recommend going and following Vet. He keeps you up to date with the amendments all the time. So on the batch deal, they found a bug. They found a problem, and they have to upgrade the network, and then they will push a new amendment vote for it. Normally, a lot of the time, they'll push a fix, and then they'll re-vote for the amendment once the fix has been pushed. I don't know if this one's going to work that way or not, based on what he said, and he's a lot smarter when it comes to the UNL validators than I am. Okay, like if you want technical, if you want to geek out on stuff, Vet's your guy. I'm like high level, understand enough to be dangerous on this. But from what he said, what we're going to get is they're going to upgrade the network, and they're going to push a completely new amendment, and that one probably ends up being deprecated, and then the new batch one will be voted through. So yeah, they definitely want it. They found an issue with it, and so that's why they're holding off. Henry says, is Jake going to put $1,000 XRP on Floyd Mayweather to beat Manny Pacquiao on 19th of September 2026? Are we starting Digital Texas XRP Cartel? Basically digital outlaws. Polymarket is wild to see, how many people are getting on there and betting on the outcomes of stuff. It's crazy. If you are one that wants to bet on odds, Polymarket is, you make odds on anything, really. I don't bet on fights. You're probably not going to like my answer on this. I think all that stuff's fixed. I think the majority of high-level sports is fixed. There's been enough refs and other people that have come out and said that explicitly, and also fixed games and stuff. There was some stuff before the Super Bowl. I don't remember what I was watching. It was the game. It was the playoffs leading up to the Super Bowl, and there were a couple really questionable calls that I saw in a game in overtime. I don't remember who was playing now. Anyway, I'm not a big sports guy, but for me, I think, if you watch the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight, man, that wasn't Tyson. Tyson is hungry, and Tyson's going to eat. And for him to end up getting beat by Jake Paul like that, and then Jake Paul got beat by that other guy in that other fight. Anyway, money, right? Money talks. So I don't know. I like Floyd Mayweather, and I like Pacquiao. I think that'll be a really good fight if it's allowed to be a legitimate fight. But unfortunately, we are not going to be running a bookie here in Texas. I'll let Polymarket take that one. Chill says, evening, sir. I'm looking to roll over my 401k into crypto in a self-directed IRA. Do you have any recommendations as to a reputable custodian? As always, appreciate your guidance. We can do that at Digital Wealth Partners. Okay. I will say this though. We do charge AUM fees. However, we also have a product that you can generate additional returns on your XRP inside of your IRA. So you compound XRP and cash. It's an algorithmic trading strategy that's layered four candlesticks deep based on different time frames. It's proprietary. Nobody else has access to this. We back tested it 5 years. The worst year was 6%. The best year is 60+%. If you have volatility in the market, you're going to make a lot of money, extra money on your XRP and on your portfolio inside your IRA with Digital Wealth Partners. So there's AUM fees, but we should be more than covering those with the additional returns that you're going to be getting based on the historical performance. Historical performance is not indicative of future performance. Just have to say that, there's my attorneys and everybody, disclaimers and all the stuff. I'm excited about it. I think it's a good product. I think that it, covers hopefully the AUM fees that we charge. Now there's other custodians out there like iTrust Capital, Bitcoin IRA, and many others that have free, but they charge you on the trades. We're not going to charge you on the trades because it's an algorithmic trading strategy. So up to you on that. I think that we have a superior product in today's market. It's aligned with our clients' incentives. We want you to hold the asset over the long term and generate additional cash and more of the asset itself. And to do that inside theirs, it's kind of cumbersome. You can trade. Again, you got to look at the spread and the fee. You're only going to be able to execute a few a day because of the way that they hold the asset. So anyway, apples and oranges. I think it's kind of two separate things. But those are kind of some of the options. You can, I would talk to all of them. I would talk to us. I would talk to them, have a conversation, see which one's the best fit for you. And then, like you said, roll your 401k into that self-directed IRA. That's what I did in 2020, and it worked out really well for me. The undisputed Godfather. Appreciate you on the super chat. They say, looking forward to meeting Brad, Monica, David, and XRP at the XRP conference in Sydney on Friday. If you could ask them one question, what would it be? Ooh, I've met them all in person multiple times. So I like to get David to geek out on stuff. Anytime I've ever talked to David Schwartz, I talk about the amendments and the next ones that are upcoming and the AMMs and like what he sees on the horizon for stuff and how they can work in financial institutions and why they built them the way that they did. So those are the things I would ask David, because David then turns into like a kid in a candy store and he wants to tell you everything. So that's always fun. Brad, Rock Chalk Jayhawk, I'd probably ask him, if he thinks Kansas will end up getting a title in the near future in any of the sports there. Because he's not going to tell me anything about XRP that I don't already know, or Ripple, really. And then Monica's interesting. I've watched her at Swell and speak publicly. She's gotten better and better each year, by the way. Kudos to her. I'm trying to work on my public speaking game, so I watch other people and how they do it. What would I ask her? So probably the same. I would just get her to double down on, or double click on the full scale adoption for XRP and the XRPL here in 2026. I would ask her, what did you mean by that specifically? And see if she would dive into that, right? Because that's a very broad statement. I mean, it's telling, right? It means that this year we're going to see full-scale institutional adoption of XRP and the XRPL. But I would be like, wouldn't XRP have to be a much higher price for that to actually happen? And wouldn't it need to be fairly stable? I mean, David Schwartz said, after you were up, that the main opposition to institutions holding XRP has been the volatility of the asset. Like that's where I would take that conversation. I don't know if she would bite on that or not. But Brad wouldn't. Brad would. He's very good at I don't want to say skirting things, but telling you how it is, but also um, being Brad's a good politician, man. He is good at giving you the goods without explicitly saying things. Whereas Monica, I think that might jam her up a little bit. She'd probably pause for a little while and think through that, and she'd still probably answer the same way as Brad would. But yeah, diplomatic. That's a good word. That's a good word. Anyway, those are the three. It wouldn't be the same question for each one of them because again, like I've been around them enough to know how each one kind of operates, and I would curate my question to what they would, one, get the most excited about, and two, give me what I'm looking for, right? So good luck out there in Australia. I don't know if that tactic's going to work for you or not, but that's the way I would approach it. Joseph, thank you for the super chat, my man. I don't see your question here, but if I find it in the chat below, I will answer it. Appreciate the support. We got Love You for Life 77. They say, Jake, I understand that the growth fund and the income fund are not under Anchorage custody. What's the difference between the two? Still insured? Yeah, they're still insured. So we are actually migrating some of those over to Zodia for a couple different reasons. One, CEFU. So if you read the investor documents, they talk about institutional custody at CEFU, Anchorage, or Zodia. And they're migrating them to Zodia so that we can get a full line of margin against them. Right now, we get 80% at CEFU, and we would like to get the full 100%. And I like Zodia's custody better, like they use Ripple custody. So I think they've effectively moved those over there as far as I know. And if Anchorage could support off-exchange settlement and a lot of the stuff that we want to do, then we would just leave them there. And they're working on that diligently, but it's a slow process. You do have the insurance. You got Zodia's insurance, which is really good. So yes, is the answer. They're still insured. They're in institutional custody. They're segregated. It's our account. And then it gets reflected out of there onto the exchange where it's margined. So again, mitigating counterparty risk, structured the right way. Again, I would love all this stuff to be done right there out of Anchorage or right out of, a Fidelity. Fidelity and a lot of these large institutions are hiring people specifically to build this stuff out and make sure that they have these capabilities. But there's still 12 to 18 months from really having off-exchange settlement or atomic settlement or a lot of the things that I want them to have. There's a really specific way that I want this done. We got this stuff to market in an imperfect way. Right, we just kind of worked with what we had. We're the trailblazers. I feel like a lot of the time we're chopping through the Amazon forest with a machete, cutting the path for everybody else, blazing the trail. And sometimes you do the best with what you have. And we've disclosed all those things. So again, if you're an investor, all of that is in the PPM subscription agreement. All the stuff that we've had drafted with Cole Mallon and their legal counsel. They are the best in the biz. They put on the show Coin Alts every single year with MG Stover and many of the other large fund admins and providers and auditors. So yeah, I mean, we're doing this at the highest level that we possibly can with the tools and partners that we have. So that's the current situation with all that. And I'm excited that we're going to be able to margin those at 100% because we only ever trade 40 or 60% of that line of margin. So that'll add some additional returns to what people are capable of getting, structuring it that way versus having an 80% line of margin like we used to. Mr. Rick Johnson, my man, he says, Jake, in one of your YouTube shorts, you said, I like hash, I like XDC. XDC drug? No. Roids too? Why should we trust an addict with our crypto? Just kidding. You're a good guy. We trust you. Love you. I appreciate that, man. Yeah. So look, I was a bodybuilder. I definitely used pharmaceuticals for a period of time. Definitely no ecstasy though. I've never I've never done coke. I've never done any ecstasy. I've never done any party drugs. I don't know. I've never felt the need. I've never been to like rave has never been my scene. Y'all might know that, like, I met my wife country dancing. I like, I'm in Texas, right? So honky tonk is kind of my thing versus raves or party drugs. But again, I mean, even if you don't trust me, right? Do your due diligence. Come ask our firm, talk to them. Going through our SEC audit right now, going through the fund audit, which is taking way longer than I would like it to, but they should be closing that anytime now, with Witham, who is our auditor. Again, so we made this announcement here recently at ETH Denver, but I'm no longer the CEO. I am chairman. I still own the company, but I've stepped up to chairman, and I am focused on partnerships and high level products, which is cool because now I can kind of step out of the business. Erin Freeze is the CEO. We promoted her to that position, and they run the day to day. They execute. They fulfill. And then I'm able to kind of step back and look at the higher picture on things, and help navigate, what's next for the company. And that's what I've kind of viewed my role as the whole time. I've always tried to replace myself every time I can. Every time we've made a little bit more money, I hire somebody to replace myself over and over and over again. And people have asked me, how we scaled so quickly. That's literally what it was. Every time we made enough money to hire the next right person, I made that hire, and didn't pay myself. I just replaced myself over and over again as fast as I could. So, again, I have no access to any of the client's assets over there. I am not a financial advisor, can't move anything. I don't have any signing capability. Again, I just own the company. So I'm a control person, not necessarily an access person. And again, I come on here, I talk, I try to be candid with you guys and give you the real deal. And I appreciate your sarcasm. It's pretty good. But for those that, may have those thoughts, again, it's not me managing the crypto. I have built an entire team, engine, and systems, along with, the fantastic people that we have working there to be able to manage all of that without any of my personal involvement. All right, scrolling on down, about an hour in here. At any point, TikTok's going to be like, you got to re-register and move the little puzzle piece into the right spot so you're not a robot. We got here for the fun. They say in Canada, we often say donuts to represent dollars. In a video, you said at the end of Trump's term, XRP to 100,000 donuts. Do you see that many donuts on the table for XRP at that time? I don't know about six figures, and I'm not trying to backtrack on that. I mean, look, like, we're only 2 years away from Trump's end of his term, 2028. I think we're going to see a massive amount of change, like a massive amount of change between now and then. You would have to see derivatives come on, and we would probably need interplanetary commerce of some kind, and you're going to need AI agents to be proliferating at an exponential rate. Okay, so all of those things compounding, it's possible. I will say it's possible. Probable, I think high 5 digits, mid to high 5 digits is much more likely than 6 digits by the end of Trump's term. Now, if we're talking 2030, yeah, I could see 6-digit XRP easily 2030, 2032, somewhere in there. $1 million XRP could also happen in the same time frame. Once 80% of the global economy has been tokenized, you're going to see a ton of value moving over the XRPL. So when I say a ton, I mean like pentillions of dollars, crazy amounts of value. The global GDP, and people will say like, well, the global GDP isn't even that much today. That's the voice I hear when people say that, by the way. like an annoying voice. Um, when we look at humanoid robots and we look at agents and the proliferation of those, it it is going to be a infinite scaling mechanism for the global GDP. Andrew, you got small arms over here on Twitter, or excuse me, not on Twitter, but on TikTok. Don't tell me to stop the unrealistic price predictions. um, I'm just giving you hell, man. It'll be fine. Okay, so anyway, that's where that's at. Again, that's going to require a lot of things to happen between here and now, or now and then. You're going to have to see supply shock. You're going to have to see adoption. You're going to have to see subnets. You're going to have to see payment channels. You're going to have to see batch payments. You're going to have to see a ton of these amendments that they currently have up, and even more coming to the XRPL for there to be that amount of volume and price. But with all those things and catalysts that I just mentioned, it's not that it's impossible. And we did see Bitcoin go from $1 to $100,000 in 15 years. And I think you could see XRP do that in half the time. So maybe a little less than half the time, call it 5 years from now. So what is that, 2031? Yeah, I think 2031 for 6 digits. All right. Chris, Mr. Burns, he says, how would price appreciation affect the monthly escrow release, which would be a ridiculous amount? Can't see that being allowed. Well, I mean, that's literally what's allowed. It's 1 billion XRP that comes onto the market. Now, they re-escrow the majority of that, right? You need some type of liquidity mechanism to be able to maintain price stability. So as demand increases on the network, you would need something to add additional supply to be able to maintain price stability. Just like the Fed does, they're able to print more money because the demand increases across the economy. More people are born, there's more value being created, more GDP being created. They need price stability, or they need more liquidity out there to be able to function if velocity of money is at a low amount, which it still is. People are hoarding cash and stuffing it in, wherever they can, into the stock market. Stock market was down like $700 million today in total value, or maybe 700 billion. I don't know, something crazy. Big losses in the stock market today. IBM off a cliff, 13% down. It's the largest loss in a single day for IBM in like 25 or 30 years, something crazy. I think we may have topped in stocks. I know people don't want to hear that. I've been talking about it for a while. If you had some profits, maybe it was a good time to take it off the table. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. Go talk with your financial advisor before making those decisions. Just my 2 cents. But yeah, look, the escrow is going to come onto the market. And as there's more demand for the token and more demand for using the network, there's going to need to be more of the token available to be able to facilitate transactions and hold price stability. Like that's what we just talked about. The banks want a stable, high price to be able to move to use this. And right now they don't release all billion. They escrow for the last really year and a half. They've escrowed 700 million and put it back on the end of the escrow. They've only put 300 million onto the market each month. At a significantly higher price, they might put 100 million onto the market. They might put 50 million onto the market. They might re-escrow the whole re-escrow the whole thing. So it really just depends on how much needs to be put onto the market to maintain price stability. At least that's my thought behind it and why I think they created the escrow. And again, I think a lot of people just have misconceptions around that. They think, they're dumping 1 billion onto the market every month. They're not. They haven't been for a long time. They have used it to fund their business. I don't make any qualms about that. Like, they make their money off of selling XRP. But that's allowed them to make significant acquisitions that actually added to the enterprise value of Ripple and created products and solutions and adoption for XRP. And that's at the core. Like, that was reiterated over and over and over again on Community Day by Brad and many others there at the company, talking about XRP is at the core of everything that they do. And I really do believe that. And sometimes the way that they move might look in opposition to that. But really, if you look at it over a long enough time horizon, price has gone up. People are using it. It's going to see more adoption, and Ripple's going to benefit. Like, Ripple's going to benefit from a significantly higher price XRP more than anybody else. Like, our company's going to benefit a lot. They're going to benefit way more than we ever thought about benefiting. But they are the people that have advocated for this for 15 years, almost 14 years, right? I mean, if you want to count OpenCoin, then yeah, I mean, 15 years. So anyway, just a lot there, but I think that they will definitely be able to release whatever they need to onto the market to be able to maintain price stability. And again, I think a lot of the numbers people look at for market cap and other things today, they're going to have to completely change their paradigm as this progresses. Lori, she says, Jake, it was great to meet you in East Denver. Learned a lot and enjoyed meeting so many like-minded people. I look forward to the next one, maybe a gathering in Wyoming. Maybe. We have a registered agent there in Wyoming looking at doing some other stuff there in Wyoming this year. We'll see how that plays out and if we can coordinate an event with you. The conservative nomad. I said, hey, superstar. Carbon One here. Is it possible to use my holding company to open an LLC in Nevada for the purpose of starting a construction type business? I have one LLC, own the other LLC. Your thoughts, downside, upsides, not financial advice. So where do we start here? Okay. There are 3 classes in college that I learned stuff in that I actually still use today. One of those was business law. So the main way that people use a multi-layer structure like you're talking about is sometimes the one LLC owns the other, but oftentimes they are 2 separate LLCs and you are the owner of both, or you have your living trust on both. You might also have a C Corp that owns an LLC for many reasons, or is the management company for the LLC. But if you are going to hold assets in one and provide service with the other, an example of this would be a lawn care business. The lawn care business itself would be the service company. It's what would have the contracts with all the people that you're mowing yards for and trimming hedges and doing all that. Okay. And it would also employ all the people. The other LLC would be a holding company that would own all the assets, and it would lease those assets to the service company. Okay. Again, this LLC does not own this LLC. You own both, but this one leases the stuff to the other one. The reason for that is inevitably somebody's going to rear end somebody in the company truck. Somebody is going to cut a water line. Somebody's going to cut an electrical line. Somebody's going to piss some homeowner off, and they are going to sue you. And when they sue the service company, guess what? No assets. Can't take anything. You can put a lien against it. That's about it. And you can file bankruptcy with that service company, and they can't get nothing. And the other LLC owns all of the assets, and it's leasing it to that one. You just spin up another LLC that's the new service company that's got a little bit different name, and lease the assets back to that one and go back to business. I know that seems sketchy and but that's literally how this stuff works, right? So if you have an LLC that owns your digital assets, I would keep that separate of everything else unless you're going to use those digital assets and lease them to another company to do something with them. Sorry, my nose is itching tonight. So that's the way I would think about that. I would probably just set up a completely separate company there in Nevada if you're going to do something with construction. Construction has liability. If you are a doctor, if you're in construction, if you own a home or residence or anything where somebody's, potentially going to sue you, and they could pierce that corporate veil and then come after the assets in the holding company that owns that company. I wouldn't tie them together. I would have that separated out. So I don't know if that helps you or not. I was trying to give you an example. Like, that's the example that my business law professor gave, and I was like, fantastic. Okay, now I understand why there's limited liability companies and why people structure stuff that way. If you have a C corp and it's the management company, you don't want to hold any assets there, because if somebody does sue the C corp and they take control of the shares, they can liquidate assets. So you want a management company that manages and gets paid to manage, but doesn't actually own the other company. But if you're going to, have companies that own assets or provide a service, probably an LLC is going to be the best bet for most of those. Now you can have things roll up to a C corp. You're going to be taxed at 20% there. If you're going to make a lot of money, it can be advantageous to have a C corp. S corps, you just get an LLC and meet the stipulations and be able to be taxed as an S corp, pass through entity. And you could still be owned by a trust or other entities. If it's an LLC, an S corp can only be owned by individuals. You can't have a trust on the cap table. There's not a whole lot of situations where I would use an S corp. If you had multiple shareholders and you wanted pass-through taxation and you weren't going to do that much revenue, maybe an S corp. But again, you probably want your living trust on the cap table at some point, if you're structuring stuff the right way for probate. And so anyway, again, I am not an attorney. I am not an estate planner. I'm not a tax attorney. And so you should probably go talk to a professional. If you need those professionals, you can always reach out to digitalfamilyoffice.io, which is, Digital Ascension Group effectively. And we can put you in touch with the best people in your area or state to help you make those decisions. Steven, my man, he says, hello, legend. I'm Carbon2. Good to see you. Can I get Discord access for my iPhone? I've tried to send help requests via email. There's no response. How can I get help? If you already have it on your computer, go into Discord, ask one of the moderators or ask in the FAQ channel, and they will help you out. But yeah, you can absolutely just download the Discord app on your phone and log in just like you would log into your computer. And you should have access to the Beyond Broke Mastermind there in the same capacity that you do on your computer or your laptop. Yeah, you just download the app and then use the same account, and you should have access to it. But again, if you have trouble and you are logged in on a desktop or a laptop, I would just reach out to the moderators or the FAQ channel, and they could help you out. Appreciate the super chat, by the way, and appreciate you being part of Carbon too. We got T Mac, my man. He says, when my XRP wealth reaches $500 million, that's 100K plus in annual reporting fees to Wyoming LLC, is steep. Any next best options for long-term holders? So they changed that law. It's still just $60. It used to be 0.00004% of the AUM that you had to pay on an annual basis, but they actually did away with that, and it's still just $60. South Dakota, though, is another really good option if you plan to, if you want cheap cost for the LLC and maintenance there. I don't believe that escalates or is a percentage of the LLC's AUM either. So that's another good option. Nevada is not as good. Get really good charging order protection there in Nevada. But South Dakota would be my recommendation if you feel that you do need to pay that type of fee. In Wyoming, based on my conversations with our attorneys, that's no longer the case. Joseph, he says, hi, Jake. I saw you in Denver, Carbon 3 member. Good to see you, dude. I asked for LLMs what the estimated price of XRP would be with 20% of Swift transactions on chain, and the answer came back between $80 and $150. When I asked to account for slippage, without slippage, it was less. Thank you for the super chat. It was great to see you there in Denver. So Brad said that he thinks by 2030, Ripple will have 14% of Swift's volume. I think R3 probably is what Swift integrates, Corda, and I think that they will settle through XRP, real time on the back end of Swift. A lot of people say, CCIP and Chainlink. Chainlink isn't a settlement asset; it's an oracle, and it's fantastic at that. It also allows for interchain, multi-chain interoperability. Awesome for that. Settlement, pretty clunky. Not the thing for that. And I think people become maximalist on stuff. I could probably even say that I occasionally become maximalist on things. But also, look, like the XRPL added an amendment for oracles. If they weren't going to use Chainlink, if they weren't going to use, the Flare time series oracle, they wouldn't have added that, right? So it needs interoperability. You need, price oracles. You need oracles to be able to move real world data on chain to be able to execute in smart contracts. Like, for all this to actually work, you have to have multiple chains all working together to be able to facilitate it. And they all have different reasons for you to use it. And they're going to be used in those capacities. Each one of them has the best thing that they are good at. And that's what they'll be used for. So, there's always a Chainlink answer. People talking about World Liberty Financial today. There's a few people out there on Twitter saying that Eric Trump was deleting those tweets. Did depeg earlier today. They came out and stated it's going to be okay. Gives me Luna vibes. Okay. I'm not saying it's going to be like that. But when Terra Luna depegged, almost the same stuff happened. People were deleting tweets and any mentions of it. They then came out and said it was going to be okay, and then 2 days later it fell off a cliff and exploded. I'm not saying that that's going to happen with World Liberty Financial. I don't know. It's just giving me same type of vibes here. So we'll see what happens with it. Eric Trump came back out and said that he's still on board. I don't know why he was deleting tweets if he's still on board. But, I think that's USD1 is their stable coin. So we will see. It's not a stable coin that I use on any. I actually have never sent any transactions using that stable coin. I've used Paxos. I've used USDC. I have used USDT at different points, which is not my faves, like public restroom, get in there, get out. And then RLUSD. So I've used those 4 stable coins at different points in my history in crypto, but I've never used USD1. So I'll have to see how that ends up playing out. We got the Duke. He says, hello to the man, the myth, the legend, and the tea lady. Beyond Broke Mastermind. All in and excited. Do you see a line of credit product alongside the borrowing against your XRP stack? Yes. You guys are good. You guys can see the future very similar to myself. What can I say about this? There's a product that we're working on that I am very excited about that we will be able to announce in the not too distant future, that would act as a line of credit against your XRP. And it's with a trusted name that you guys all know. So I will leave it there. We got Otis, Oltsy. Man, I need more tea. What do you think about Russia increasing its military strength on the Finnish border and war is already possible? Look, like China and Russia seem to be backing up Iran. We obviously have sanctioned Iran. We've sanctioned Russia. They're kind of on the same team. If you wanted to paint your enemies together, like that's a good way to do it. I don't think we're going to see World War III here. Why? I'm pretty confident that as soon as they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, you're going to see global markets plummet. And everybody's going to be like, oh no, we have set off Armageddon in financial markets. And they're going to be like, never mind, we didn't want to do this. We're not trying to fight. We're going to figure it out. And then they'll implement XRP, and then it'll be a level playing field anyway. So a lot of the like fighting that's going on, I think has, it's gonna my tinfoil hat. I feel like it's orchestrated. For Jim Rickards to come out in 2014 and talk about this exact scenario and be an advisor to the Pentagon and the US government for more than a decade before this happens. Man, seems pretty orchestrated to me. So I think all that to say, I know a lot of people, and I'm praying for everybody, by the way. I don't want there to be collateral damage. I don't want people to die. I don't want bombs to go off. Like, they're already doing a lot of that stuff that I don't necessarily want to happen. But if they'll just shut down the Strait of Hormuz, just shut it down. That's all I want. I don't want anybody to die. I don't want any problems. I just want oil to stop going to Japan for like a couple days. That's all I need. And then everything will happen that we've been waiting on. And it will help the rest of the world, because then there's a neutral bridge asset that sits between everybody and it's a level playing field. So anyway, sure, Russia could be, mounting people and positioning themselves and doing all that. I don't think this thing's going to escalate. I think as soon as they roll this deal out, I think everybody's going to call truce, shake hands, and walk away and be happy. The other thing, I want to mention this real quick. I'm not calling this one, but I see it as a possibility. Okay. I think the UN could make a move here in the Middle East and start and kick this off. I don't know, like, Trump is posturing, Russia's posturing, Iran's posturing, and you've got Israel posturing also, and China. None of them, I don't think, want to kick this deal off. I think the UN might come in and kick the door in and do something crazy. Based on what I saw on Twitter before I got on here, there apparently the leader in Iran had been seriously injured or killed at his home. I, again, don't want any bad things to happen, but if that's the case, I think that there will be retaliation in the not too distant future. I've been watching this Iran army. Let's see here. No, that's the wrong one. That's not the account that Daily Iran News is the one that I've been watching. And they think everything's about to kick off here. So what a Tuesday. Turn up Tuesday if it happens. Mr. Morris, or Miss Morris, she says, Jake, tell us about H-bar news and minimum requirements. Really enjoy the content. Great work. Hope to see you on the other side. Thank you. So, if you wanted to hold your H-bar in institutional custody at Anchorage, we can do that for you as of this week over there at Digital Wealth Partners. It's limited in what we can do. So we can hold it. We are looking at, trying to figure out a minimum for H-bar. Right now it is $500,000 in your total portfolio value, or 50,000 XRP. If you got 50,000 XRP and some H-bar, you can move your H-bar in over there to Anchorage and get it off your cold wallet and sleep good at night. Know that it's insured, segregated, bankruptcy remote, all the fun stuff. We are working on a product. We've had conversations to be able to generate returns on your H-bar. We are working with, I can't say their name. Another partner that has a strong track record for generating significant returns on HBAR for the people you would want them to have strong track record with. We met them at SALT last year. I will say that. We will be going to SALT again this year in both Wyoming and Bermuda. Excited about that. It's invite only, exclusive. They did really good job curating the room last year. Very high level conversations, best of the best in the industry there. So shout out to them for putting together a fantastic conference. Not cheap to sponsor or attend that. But it'll be well worth it because we will be in the room with a lot of highly decorated. That's probably the best term that I could say. People. So yeah, we can absolutely hold the HBAR over there. We'll figure out some type of minimum for the HBAR in the near future. Oh, you guys did good and didn't put too many super chats here. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom and we're going to work our way back up. I'm probably not going to get to all of the super chats and I apologize for that. I'm going to see if Mad Mike, yeah, my man, he put a couple of them over here. No, just the one. Tell them to email info. Yeah, okay. So I'm assuming that's from the question earlier. All right, we'll scroll up from the bottom. No more super chats. Don't waste your money. I'm not going to get to them. I love you guys. And I feel bad when you guys send a super chat and I don't respond. So I will show you guys this real quick. I haven't talked about this, but if you do want the LLC, like the other gentleman was talking about, there in Wyoming, you can use the code 50OFF50OFFDAG LLC. Get you everything end to end for $2,000 on the holding company to manage your digital assets the right way. And we do that all for you if you use that code over there at digitalfamilyoffice.io. Leo, Mr. Properties, he says, isn't the 100 million insurance policy way too low once there's price appreciation? Yes. Yep. Look, man, I'm with you. We can get species on any one of the accounts. As soon as somebody's worth more than 100 million in one of the accounts, we're happy to have that conversation with Marsh, who is the broker, to be able to figure out with Lloyd's of London what it's going to cost to be able to get additional insurance on people's accounts. We don't have that problem yet. We don't have anybody that has more than 100 million with us, any one single person. So, you know, post price appreciation, yes, like you're absolutely right. And we've already initiated those conversations and they said, cool, as soon as you have somebody, call us. And we were like, not even going to quote it. Not even going to, no. Okay. This has been something that we talk to our partners. We get excited. We know what's going to happen. We tell them what's going to happen. And they're like, yeah, we'll see. And we have delivered every single time because of you guys. Like if we didn't have fantastic clients and people that wanted the products and solutions that we're bringing to market, we don't have a business. So kudos to everybody watching. Kudos to all the clients at Digital Wealth Partners, people in the Mastermind. If we didn't have a fantastic community of people that wanted this stuff, we really wouldn't have a lot of the credibility that we have. And so, but because of that, we've continued to execute. When we launched the funds, we said, hey, we're going to have hundreds of people and $100 million in the first, month of onboarding. And they were like, yeah, we have a lot of people that say that. That doesn't ever happen. And then we did. And all of our partners were like, oh, you weren't kidding. And we were like, no, we told you, like, this is what was going to happen. So since then, we've gained a lot of credibility with people. But on the insurance side, they're still, like, yeah, we'll worry about that when it actually happens. So that's where we're at with it. And we would love to have those conversations. So I hope, Leo, you're one of the first people that have more than $100 million with us. And we will absolutely go talk to Lloyd's of London and make sure that you have additional insurance on your account. Teresos has a go. Good to see you. They say, just wanting to say thank you to you and your team and the tea lady. Like, sub, and share. Thank you. Appreciate that, my man. Like he says, I always forget to say this on here, but if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. All those things do help the algorithm and get this out to more people. And if you're getting value from it, if you're not getting value, you think it's lame, don't do any of those things. He also says, if someone has a decent amount of XRP already, would you suggest they buy Ripple private equity or more XRP? I have allocations to both. Many people want to diversify, and you're really kind of betting on the same horse. I would just say that Ripple's a bit further along in their valuation than XRP is. Really kind of determine, like, this is a question for your financial advisor, not really me. I'll tell you my paradigm when I think about it. Why are you investing? If you're investing for ROI and the ability to borrow against it and generate cash returns, I would say XRP. If you want something in your stock portfolio at some point that pays you a dividend that you can margin and will continue to grow like Amazon over an extended period of time, probably buy Ripple. Kind of two different deals, right? So one is the asset that moves value in a protocol and will continue to scale over time to be able to meet that demand as more assets move on chain. And you need back-end settlement for markets and institutions. And the other one is a company. Companies work with market cap. You know, Brad Garlinghouse, we'll just go this route, okay? Brad said that he believes that Ripple can be the first $1 trillion crypto company. I would agree with that. So let's just do the math on a $1 trillion Ripple company. All right, $1 trillion. That's 1 billion. 1 trillion. Gotta turn the phone sideways because there's too many zeros. We're going to divide that by 50 billion, which is what the current value of Ripple is today. That's a 20x. So to see a 20x on XRP, like $25. Yeah. Up to you. If you think XRP is going to $100, $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, and you're in it for ROI, probably XRP. If you're in it for, you know, a kick-ass stock portfolio at some point, you want a cool dividend, and you want to be able to margin it and borrow against your Ripple shares pretty easily, that's a great play too. When is it a bad time to get a 20x on your money? Never. What's the duration on that? I don't know. Could be a couple years, maybe more. Depends on the appreciation of XRP. Depends on how they value the company post price appreciation. Are they going to maintain, you know, control of the escrow? Are they just going to keep the 5 billion XRP that they currently use to provide an ODL and some of the other products? I don't have the answer to those questions. And so for me, I just continue to dollar cost average into XRP. So again, can't give you financial advice, just pontificating, giving you, you know, kind of my framework around thinking about it. And you can make your own financial decisions. We already did those. Scrolling on up. We got Jazz. They say, Mr. Claver, I just turned 18 days ago. Happy birthday, dude. Very cool. I have been hustling hard and now hold a bit more than the top 10% in cold storage. I appreciate what you do. Absolutely. Any advice would be amazing. Jesus is Lord. Praise God. God is good, my man. Sounds like you got a good head on your shoulders at 18 years old. I wish I knew about any of this stuff when I was 18 years old. I was graduating in 09 in when I was 18. And man, oh man, do I wish I knew about Bitcoin. Not that I had any money to be able to put in it anyway, and I probably would have sold it off a lot sooner. If I had doubled my money or 10 times my money, I'd have been very happy with that. Um, to think it would go to $100,000 one day is just crazy, right? Um, man, if I had some advice for 18-year-old Jake, um, I gave one not too long ago. Take the risks, man. You got a long time horizon. You got a high risk tolerance right now. If you got a big dream, dream big. And then work back. I like OKRs or objectives and key results. So if you've got it's hard to think in a 10-year vision at 18 years old or a 20-year vision when you're 18 years old. Patrick Bet-David talks about, kind of the 4 phases of his life. The first 20 years, don't mess it up. Don't get her pregnant. Don't be in the car with the drugs type stuff. Don't put yourself at a disadvantage. The next 20 years is about building financial freedom for yourself and your family. The first 10 of that, you probably go work for somebody else that has made it in whatever industry you want to make it in. Learn everything that you can from them. And for the next 10 years, you build it. Whatever, your core competency is, whatever your special gifts are, leverage those. And by 40, you're good. You've sold a business for a couple $100 million. You've scaled things, you've built teams, you've managed people, you've raised capital, you understand, how to do all that stuff. By the time you're 40, you're going to be way ahead of everybody else. So, if you're reading books, I didn't start really reading books until the last 6 years. Like I kind of read books in my 20s. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and some other ones. I wish I had been more diligent about reading. Biographies, autobiographies, books on money, books on sales, books on psychology. All of that stuff would have been a huge advantage for me at 18 years old if I had been paying attention. Man, like you just have, but I would say this, like almost everybody I know would give up all the money that they had just to be your age again and feel 18 and have that much life in front of them. So don't take that for granted. It goes by quick. It's fun, but yeah, enjoy it. Try to relish the moment and the time that you have, because it does go by quick as you age. And people used to tell me that when I was younger. They were like, as you get older, time goes faster. It really does. I can tell you, by 25 or 30, most of your life is automated. You tend to do the same thing on a regular basis. You drive to work and it's like you blinked. Do new things on a consistent basis. Go new places, take different routes, brush your teeth with your left hand. I like traveling because my weeks slow down. I'm in a different environment. I'm more present in conversations. I feel like my life extends. I don't, when I'm at home, not that I don't like being at home, because I really do. I love being at home with my wife and my son, but it's a familiar environment. So things tend to go faster. So whatever you can do to kind of slow things down, and do things a little bit different and challenge yourself, I would do those things. And I'm rambling on here, but I'm just trying to think about like all the things I would tell myself if I was 18 years old. There's a lot more there, but hopefully that's helpful for you. Kudos to you for putting yourself in a position at that age to be able to capitalize on this. You got a long time horizon. Just sit on your hands. Don't sell it. Just sit on your hands. And you're going to be doing really good by the time you're 30 years old. Crabs Man says, is DWP accepting non-accredited? I missed the 300K income mark and my net worth is now less than $1 million outside of my home, thanks to XRP dropping. I reached out and it appears accredited only. Decent affiliate link. We do have a decent affiliate link. Would love to. I'm sure that they'll share that in the chat down below. On the other deal, we absolutely take non-accredited people. However, I would say that you're accredited. And you might say, well, how is that possible? My net worth is now under $1 million because XRP dropped. Well, if any time in the last 2 years your net worth has been over $1 million, you can get your CPA or your accountant or your wealth manager to write you a letter that says that you did have over $1 million in net worth outside your primary residence, and that would qualify you as an accredited investor. So I would go to your accountant or your CPA or your attorney, one of those counterparties, and say, hey, here's my wallet. This is how much XRP I had. This is the price that it was. You can see that it was over $1 million on this date. Would you write me a letter that says I'm accredited? And they will write it for you because you can prove it. So that's the way I would go about that. And then you can participate in the funds and the products that they have over there at Digital Wealth Partners until we have the yield product live, which will be available for accredited and non-accredited investors alike. They're Digital Wealth Partners. This is kind of a second iteration, the same question. What do you think about Russia increasing military on the Finnish border? War is always possible. Will this be the third world war before the summer and all stock markets collapse? I think we're going to see a huge downward move in markets, but I don't know that they're going to collapse. I think we'll be okay because they're going to roll out XRP and they will increase the velocity of money and they will be able to de-risk from their losses and all of it will be good. Mr. Glasscock again says one more question. So when you say you are waiting for oil and reverse carry trade, what exactly is the correlation between that and XRP? Fantastic question. If you haven't, I would encourage you to go watch my 4th iteration of the domino theory, and that will lay out everything end to end for you. It's 15 minutes, and it walks you through each one of the dominoes, in what order I think they're going to happen, and how that leads to a high price XRP. But at, just a high level, I'll kind of write it down for you. Oil spikes, reverse carry trade unwinds. Bank of Japan has to raise interest rates because of the inflation from the energy costs in their economy. Everybody rushes to repay those loans to the Bank of Japan. They dump US treasuries and rotate into Japanese bonds because those are going to pay a higher interest rate at that point than the US treasuries. All of those US treasuries come flooding back to the US. Luckily, we have stablecoin regulation here, and there's demand domestically for those treasuries, so that stabilizes the bond market. Unfortunately, that doesn't stabilize the rest of the markets. We have huge downside in other markets globally, across the board, commodities. Doesn't matter where you have money, it's going to take a haircut. Now we already have huge unrealized losses for the investment banks. You're also going to have huge unrealized losses on Bitcoin because of the ETFs. The ETFs absolutely have systemic risk at this point. And then aside from that, I think Tether's going to have some implications. I don't know if they get sanctioned or if they are depegged because of their allocations in gold and Bitcoin and some of this other private debt that they have on their balance sheet. That causes exchanges to go illiquid. And you're going to have the Shane Ellis theory play out. So they're going to need XRP to drive, liquidity in their ecosystems to be able to settle through the DEX and everything that allows. Shane Ellis, if you want to go look it up, he talks about a $500 XRP just from Bitfinex adopting XRP as their settlement asset or the liquidity provision instead of Tether. And then you're also going to have demand on the back end of the stock market for real-time settlement to be able to de-risk from those positions in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin settles real-time-ish. It's faster than T+1, which is what currently the market settles at. That's what the president of NASDAQ and the SEC chair and everybody else have already talked about this year, is the first implementation for distributed ledger technology is on the back end of the stock market with the DTCC between the clearinghouses and the brokers. Project Ion was finalized in 2022, August of that year, between the DTCC and R3. So if you needed a way for them to be able to de-risk, all those positions in stocks and jumpstart the economy and catapult the velocity of money and remove inflation all at one time, driving the price of XRP substantially higher would be the way to do it. I think also we will see a BlackRock ETF rolled out at the exact moment they need to in order to be able to drive a supply shock to push it to the levels that they need it to be, alongside the demand from the exchanges in order for them to be able to facilitate, the settlement in the back end of the stock market and for it to provide enough liquidity in that situation. So again, high level, very quickly running through the domino theory. If you want the full meal deal, you can just go over there and watch it on the channel. If you're watching on YouTube, which is where you asked that question, I would just go check it out. Again, maybe 15 minutes for the fourth iteration of the domino theory. In JM 0727, they say, curious your thoughts on the role of the Olympics, Paralympics is having on the U.S. waiting to escalate, especially since we host in 2028 risk of sanctions. Yeah, you haven't really ever seen many world wars going on during the Olympics. I think that it's absolutely playing a role, and now that it's over, we can finally see things move here. Good tea. My wife's wonderful. She's a nice lady sometimes. Sometimes she's a nice lady. Sometimes she's mean. Which I'm sure everybody's wife is that way. 5150 Heart says, Money Disrupted, phenomenal documentary, very disturbing yet helpful. Creatures from Jekyll Island equals evil men. Could the Fed be woven into Ripple? Ooh. She says she made him a wonderful roast beef tonight, and he says she's mean. She's been very nice lately. I will give her that. She's been very nice lately. My wife is wonderful, and she's a great cook, by the way. If your wife isn't a good cook, you're missing out. I'll tell you that. All right, so back to Money Disrupted. Could the Fed be woven into Ripple? I think it could have been. I don't think it is. So Greg Kidd had Ripple go meet with the Fed back in 2014. He was like the fourth or fifth employee at Ripple, and he got them an audience. I think the Fed told him to kick rocks. I think they came to the Fed and said, hey, we want to work with you. We're going to be this global reserve currency. We've got this better system. It'll removes the dollar, disintermediates the dollar. And we think that we would rather you guys be on the forefront of that versus like on the back end of it. And I think they said, kick rocks. We're the ones in charge here. We don't need your XRP. Well, I think they went around to the rest of the world, and the rest of the world thought, oh yeah, this is way better than the dollar. This removes us from the dollar, which removes us from sanctions. It helps us in a bunch of different ways. It levels the playing field, does all these things. And I think the Fed came back to the table too late. I could be wrong about all this, by the way. Nobody's ever told me any of this. This is just me speculating. Okay. I think we're going to move to the Treasury. I think the IRS goes away. At least this is all stuff I'm hopeful for. Okay. Right. Like we work with the tax code. We do all these things to be able to mitigate taxes and work with our clients in that manner. We have to operate in the paradigm that exists. But all that being said, I would love to move to a flat tax and just remove the IRS and the Fed. The Fed is a private corporation. They are not a federal entity. They are not a reserve. They print our money. They're owned by the 6 largest banks in the nation. They are sovereign away from the U.S., and they profited off the taxpayers and all of our money in the United States for the past 100 years. I am ready for our money to move back to the Treasury, for us to become a republic again. There's, a lot of things, people are all about the democracy. Not really. I would prefer a republic. I don't even think we're going to get that, though. I think we're going to move to a technocracy. I think that there's going to be a lot of things that shift in the next 2 years before the end of Trump's term. People that I'm close to that are very intelligent, that I'm in business with, would tell me I'm crazy when I say that type of stuff. That's fine. I probably am. I'm probably aggressive with my timelines. You guys probably have seen that at this point. So maybe it takes longer than that. Maybe it's a couple more terms, but I think things could shift pretty drastically. And I'm very hopeful that they do remove the Fed and the IRS, and then we go back to sound money that's issued by our Treasury. The last two presidents that have tried to do that, Lincoln and Kennedy, didn't work out for them, unfortunately. Back to the LLC one more time for you guys. If you do need the LLC to be able to manage your digital assets, there's the code one more time. It is 50 off 50OFFDAG LLC. Get you everything end to end for management of your digital assets. They're in a holding company in Wyoming. This person says, "Is my crystal ball off?" It is. It hasn't been working for a while, so I was like, all right, well, I rub it, doesn't tell me the future anymore. No, I'm just kidding. My light for it's like back over there, and I just didn't put it up there tonight. But I appreciate you noticing. That lets me know that I should probably put it up there. Jeff, he says, if I decide to move my XRP to your company, how would the loan against XRP work? Would the liquidation process be similar to Morpho? No. Yes, no. So we do a tri-party agreement. The assets stay there at Anchorage. They do move over to one of our counterparties, either Arch Lending, Galaxy, or Maple Finance. I don't know about Maple Finance anymore. Probably just Arch Lending or Galaxy, depending on how much you have and the best options for you. We may have some other partners in the near future that would also be willing to lend against your XRP that I think you'd be very happy with. But until that happens, the difference between us and Morpho or an Aave is it's not a smart contract. So there's a lot more grace and leniency if there is a capital call or a top-up required. So let's say it happens on a weekend. They get that you don't got the money and you can't wire it over till Monday or Tuesday. And they'll work with you. As long as you reach out and you say, hey, I see that this isn't a thing. I've got the money. I'm going to send it over here to meet my capital call. And you stay up on your payments, no problems. Super cool. You're dealing with people. You're not dealing with code. Okay? And that's the difference. If you want, if you see a wick to the downside, Morpho is just going to liquidate you. It is a zero-sum game. It is a code base. The benefit that you're going to get with working with us is there's always going to be some type of human element, some grace in there, some empathy, right? Some compassion for the situation. Not to say that when it gets down to nut cutting, that it's not going to happen. We have had a few people unfortunately get liquidated because they didn't communicate in time. That has happened here in the recent drawdown. 1010 we didn't have any, right? So 1010 we had like 35 million out in loans. Nobody got liquidated, and that was a flash crash, right? Morpho liquidated, done. Us, no, not liquidated, good to go. So that would be the main difference, us versus them. But again, you do have AUM fees with us, so you are paying for people, right? Like that's kind of the part that you're paying for. Sherry says, hey Jake, Beyond Broke Mastermind, Carbon One reached out to DWP to try to onboard and purchase the remainder of XRP needed. I have not heard back yet. I love the Mastermind. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for being part of the community. And I apologize if our team did not get back to you. Email support@digitalwealthpartners.net and also add your advisor. So if you don't know who your advisor is, you can reach out to, I don't want to give emails on here because then multiple people are going to be, Who would I say? Yeah, just do support. And if you know who your advisor is, I would tag your advisor on there. And if you don't, your advisor, oh, Mike says he'll take it. So you can email Mike at digitalfamilyoffice.io, and he'll get you sorted. All right, it is almost time for me to wrap it up tonight. We're gonna hang out for another 5 or 10 minutes here, and then we're gonna shut her down. We already did this one. We did that one. We did. Yeah, did that one. I think I actually got through them all, which is unusual. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom and see if anybody else put any super chats in here, which I told you not to. So you guys are doing good. I said that at about 10:20. We got one more here. This person says, hey, I wanted to ask, in your own solid opinion, what price do you see XRP at this year? Want to hear it live. I have been advised by my attorneys to not list specific prices and state that we should see significantly higher prices. They need to be much, much higher in order to be able to be stable and adopted. After the whole debacle at the end of last year, I have been told not to give specific prices. If you want to join the mastermind, I will be a little more candid there in the mastermind than I will be here publicly. So you can go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar, get you the first month for $2, and I'll be a little more candid in that group. But here publicly, I have maintained my composure and stay with, significantly higher prices, whatever that means to you. It's probably pretty close. Look, so the other piece I would say is Monica Long just recently over there at XRP Community Day said that we would see full-scale institutional adoption for XRP and the XRPL here in 2026. They've talked about, again, these aren't my words. I'm just going to reference other people, okay? David Schwartz and many others. Who's the guy at BlackRock? I can't think of his name right now. Robbie Mitchnick. There you go. Robbie built a calculator that shows XRP at $10,000. Okay. High stable price. David Schwartz has talked about, can't be dirt cheap. Needs to be $10,000. Do we see $10,000 here this year? That seems a little bit high. Maybe a little less than that? Sure. So, again, take it with a grain of salt. I'm just one guy on the internet. Do your own research, come to your own conclusions. I have very high conviction. It's my only position. I bought a little bit of hash, like $2,000 worth of hash, which I'm down on. And I have some Ripple equity, and I have XRP, and I have our businesses. Like, that's my entire net worth. So. Truth of Hearts says, KT baby, what's going on? They say, hey Jake, do you think you'll tell us on Price Appreciation Mastermind Town Hall about the partnership with Ripple and all the products it comes with, or will it be YouTube Live, and what date will that be again? I can't talk about that. I wish I could. Isn't that, yeah, we went over that one. I think I've been through them all. I think I got all the super chats tonight. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Monday to come hang out with me. We do this every Monday and Wednesday night over here on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and on X. Yeah, we'll run through the discount codes one more time for people that want to hang around for it. And again, if you want to join the mastermind, all you got to do is go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar, get you the first month for $2 there in the mastermind. Lot of good value, month to month, no contract, over 16,000 people connected to Discord. I mean, I try to provide more value in that community than I've ever gotten in any other mastermind that I've ever been a part of for significantly more money. Um, I always want people to feel like I would pay more for this. If you need the LLC, we'd love to work with you on that. We're not the only option out there. I think we're the best option. We've done more than anybody else. All you got to do is go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and use the code 50OFF, 50OFFDAGLLC, all capitalized. Get you everything end-to-end: registered agent, EIN, articles of organization, certificate of good standing, banking memorandum, corporate veil service, and the template for the operating agreement specific to digital assets for your holding company. Nobody else does it the way that we do it. To mitigate taxes, structure it the right way, no tax implications, all the fun stuff that you get from that. So again, 50OFF, 50OFFDAGLLC. If you want a living trust alongside that, revocable living trust, you can use the code webinar trust, all capitalized, get you $200 off the revocable trust and the assignment. $800. You're not going to get that anywhere else. Everybody's going to be a couple grand on that minimum. And then last but not least, if you do want to work with digital wealth partners, hold your assets in institutional custody, be able to generate returns on your XRP, get there before everybody else. And I'll say this for those that have hung around, because I saw the numbers drop, you get the special. We are not requiring that you fund your account immediately. So if you have at least 50,000 XRP, or you anticipate that you're going to have at least 50,000 XRP, you can go ahead and sign up over there, and you don't have to put the XRP in and start paying the AUM fees. They're going to tell you 90 days. It can be a little longer than that. I think we're going to have the yield product in that period of time, and you'll be more than able to cover your fees, plus a little extra jingle in your pocket. So if you want to be proactive and beat everybody else, because once we announce that yield product, I guarantee you we're going to be slammed. It's $900, so it's $100 off if you use the code onboard100, all capitalized. Onboard100 gets you $100 off the onboarding fee over there at Digital Wealth Partners. If you want to go ahead and be proactive, you can get in for $900 if you have an LLC, and that's only available for the next 5 days here to the end of February. So for those that hung around, you got the good stuff. I hope you guys have a wonderful night, a wonderful week, and we'll see you on the next one.